Welcome, Teal, to the Thank Goddess podcast. I am so excited to have you joining us today. I personally love speaking about relationships and love. I think most women do. So I think today is going to be a very interesting conversation. I'm very excited to dive in. But before we do that, I'd love to learn a little bit about you and your background. So I suppose what led you to becoming a relationship and self love coach? How did that whole journey unfold for you and building Relax into Love?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I always say that your mess is your message. Have you ever heard of this concept
Yeah.
before? Yeah, and it is so true for me. I really struggled with relationships for a long time. And I actually now can lovingly have a name for it. The pattern that I noticed myself falling into is what I call the hook and fizzle, where I'd literally hook men in with this allure of being this independent, fun go-getter. And then a few weeks or a few months into dating me, they would just kind of fizzle away or they would dump me on the spot. And it really frustrated me a lot because I just felt like it was the one area of my life that I couldn't just go out and check the box on and go
Mm.
get. And I know that so many women I talk to too, they're like, I know, I just want to check the box on this and I can't. And this pattern I was in went on for 8 years of my dating
Wow.
life, over and over and over again, hook and fizzle, hook and fizzle. And it really started to eat away at my self-confidence and my self-worth. And I just started to figure, like, ask myself, like, what is it? What's wrong with me that I can't get a man to stick around and fall in love with me? And all my girlfriends would be like, you seem so great. Like, why
Mm.
can't men see that? And I'm like, I don't know. So any women listening that may have had something similar, I just want you to know, like, this is a common thing. It's a very real thing. And if I can overcome it, you can overcome it too. It's just about starting to take some time to look deeper within ourselves. And that's what I had to do. After 8 years of this, I realized maybe I need to look a little deeper within me and figure out what I might be contributing to this. And I ended up taking some time to actually go travel to Thailand. And I went backpacking for 6 months and checked myself into a 5 day silent meditation retreat with Buddhist monks in Thailand.
Mm.
And it was such a profound experience. I really just, I mean, it was hard. Anyone that
Mm.
has been to a silent retreat for 5 days, like our brains are like, don't lock me in there. Don't make me sit with my own thoughts for 5 days. But it really was such a powerful experience because, I mean, the first 2 days was definitely that way. I just could not get that mind to stop talking. But
Mhm.
on day three, something really, really pivotal happened. And I really ended up having an out of body experience where literally I felt like my soul lifted up outside of my body and floated up about 10 feet above my head, and then looked down at my body, down the ground, and realized it was not a part of my body anymore, and then zoomed back down just to make sure I hadn't died. It
Wow.
was that drastic. I mean, I feel like people talk about that when they have like near-death experiences in a
Mm.
coma, but I was not in a coma. I was just in this temple meditating. And when I was able to have that experience, it really did give me just such an enlightenment moment of feeling like I understood the way the world works on such a deeper level, the way that we have this mind and this body and this soul, and how they're all connected together, and how we relate on such a deeper energetic level in every area of life. And from that time, then I went back to the United States and I ended up getting a job in the corporate world, and it was my job to build out all of the professional training programs for Uber, and the headquarters team of Uber. And I remember feeling like I could still have that really grounded, confidence of, yeah, I can do my life here, but I'm still struggling with relationships. And so that's when
Mm.
I ended up hiring a relationship coach and just exploring this whole world of feminine energy and just starting to understand what else might there be that I'm just not knowing. And that's when it really clicked into place. And everything just started to mold together. And I was able to completely shift my energy with men and ended up attracting in my now husband. And we've been together over 10 years. And it's just been such a different way of life than what I had had before. And that's when we decided that we wanted to quit our corporate jobs and go travel together, which ended up meaning 2.5 years of being nomadic entrepreneurs and starting online businesses. And that's when Relax into Love was born. And I just feel like I've been able to pull all of the different areas and facets of my life into something really cohesive for women that they can really hold on to, that I call relaxing into love, both with themselves on a deep spiritual level and coming back home to themselves, and with a partner, and really building that sacred, strong foundation for long-lasting partnership.
Mm, thank you so much for sharing all of that. I love how you speak about coming back to yourself first and foremost. I think that's a key message that I really drive in on this podcast. It's really about ourselves. And like you said, when we come into greater harmony with ourselves, then that ripples out into our relationships with others. So I just love everything you shared. And I was receiving massive truth bumps as you were speaking about your experience on the meditation retreat. That's when I know something is telling me pay attention to this, because my whole body was like, oh, this is really true. This is really like potent what you're saying. So thank you for sharing. So what would you
Mm.
say is the most, I suppose, common thing that you see with women really struggling when it comes to dating or relationships or in their personal love lives? What's the main common thing, their biggest pain point?
There's a few things that I see happen over and over and over again. The first, I was literally just having this conversation with a client today, is not feeling worthy of love,
Mm,
not feeling good enough. And it's so crazy to me that this is something that is so pervasive across the board. It doesn't matter what country. I have clients all over the world. Whatever country you live in, we all seem to be plagued with this common feeling of insecurity, of not feeling good enough.
mm,
And to me, I've almost see it as like a rite of passage as humans. It's like this imposter syndrome comes onto us as we are small babies. We absorb this imposter syndrome. We're trying to learn in our young years, where do I fit in? How do I fit in? What is my value in this world? And if we can overcome that, we can step into our power and our greatness, which is what's waiting for us on this lifetime. But so often we let that power be taken away by these fears and by these insecurities. And it really is, if any woman is feeling this right now, just know that this is not, because this is such a normal fear and belief, it's not has anything actually to do with you. It's not
mm,
any sort of truth about you. This is an opportunity. This is an invitation to slay this fear and to step into your power, because your power is waiting on the other side of this. So I think that's a really, really big one, and something I really love helping women with, just transcending any fear, any beliefs that have been plaguing them or keeping them feeling small so that they can step into their power and their greatness. And I think another big thing that women really struggle with in relationships is just communication. And
mm,
that's something I think is just not modeled very well in our world, unfortunately. It's not taught to us in schools. I don't know about you in Australia, but
mhm.
for me, it's not taught in our schools
No,
here.
definitely not.
And and I think it's really an important life skill. I know it's an important life skill
Mm,
that needs to be mastered. And so when we can begin to understand, how do I manage my emotions in a healthy way? How do I get down to the root of what I'm actually feeling? And then process that and communicate that in an objective tone that's not blaming or making anyone else wrong or creating drama, but genuinely honoring our feelings. This is the way we can communicate to people where they can really see us and hear us and feel us on a deep
mhm,
level. And especially with men, this I literally just did a workshop on this yesterday about how to speak to his heart. When we can really speak from that place of that emotional depth and strength, it shows a man that it is safe to drop into his heart space. And that is what men are craving and wanting more than anything in a relationship. But so often we're so afraid on our own selves of being exposed or letting people see that quote unquote weakness, that
mm,
we don't go into those places, or we let those feelings take over and blow up and create drama and conflict. And then everything starts to unravel from there.
mm. I
Have you
love
noticed that? Have you
everything.
experienced that
Yeah,
in your life?
definitely, definitely. It's something I'm really learning more and more as I go on my own evolutionary journey and learning, so much of what I speak about on this podcast is returning to the heart and coming out of the head, because I think we've spent most of our lives, particularly, in all the conditioning we receive at school, it's to think, to be in the mind. And when you try and apply that, I mean, it might work in your career, in your business, but when it comes to love, it doesn't work. And particularly for, I think, heterosexual relationships where, I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast are women that are really connected to their divine feminine energy, and they're wanting to attract that, alpha masculine leader, but they're operating in that mental energy, trying to communicate with men how they do in the workplace and at school. And
Yes.
like you're saying, it's not, men are wanting to connect to our hearts. And it's really hard when we haven't been modeled that. I know
Yeah.
I definitely had a working mother. So she was very in that mental energy. And I was told you have to work hard, you have to save your money, and that should be a priority. And that did not help me at all with relationships. So I've really had to kind of decondition all of that and really, I suppose, implement these new way of being, literally to be.
You just are you living my life? I think you are, because I think that was my exact same story. Absolutely. Deconditioning, absolutely. To just be able to be
Yeah,
who we're supposed to be. Yeah, I
yeah.
really see it as like we come onto this earth as these little beautiful beings of light and love energy. You see any little baby and you just like,
Mm,
wow, you're just pure, innocent love energy right now. And then over time, we have experiences and sometimes negative or traumatic experiences that start to almost cloud that light. I
mm,
almost see it as like a layer of mud that begins to muddy up that light. And if we don't take the time to lovingly clear it and heal it and cleanse it, it just gets harder and harder and harder and heavier. And it starts to disconnect us fully from our soul. And
mm,
that's why I think women and everyone just gets up into that mind space. And it's because the mind's like, okay, well, I feel disconnected. So we just got to survive here. We just got to operate and figure out life. And that's where a lot of people just operate and stay. And it's celebrated and it's conditioned to have
mm,
this strong mind and to be this go-getter that can take care of everything. But when we're looking at healthy long-term relationships and foundations for success, it's not about the mind at all. It's about how
mm,
well can we be? Yes, how well can we relate? And relating comes from the heart. And so we
mm,
have to get back in touch with that. And that's a huge body of the work that I do is what I call a soul rebirth of just helping women to rinse away those layers and come back home to that soul so that they
mm,
can actually feel like themselves again and let other people feel them and see their light.
mm. Yeah, I love that so much. So, do you have any advice then for anyone listening? Because I love this idea about, speaking from the heart and really showing that to the world, and particularly to men or to whoever it is that we're dating or in relationship with. How, if say anyone's listening to this who's relating to what we're saying about being in the mind, how do we connect to our hearts and speak that, particularly if we have a belief that we might be perceived as weak, or I'm scared to be seen in this? Do you have any words of encouragement or advice for women who are maybe struggling with that belief?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think the first thing is to really start to be more aware of your body. Because I was like I was saying, we have a mind, we have a spirit, and we have a body. And the body, I feel like, gets lost in
Mm,
translation in all of this a lot. But the body is a huge mechanism to help us know if we are feeling in alignment or out of alignment with our truest self.
mm,
And so, what I encourage a lot of times with my clients is just to have a check in every day and a body scan for your body of where is there any tightness or tension or constriction in my body? Or if I'm feeling stressed or anxious, how is that showing up in my body? And a lot of times, once we start to bring more awareness to that, we can really begin to isolate and see, oh, it's showing up in my stomach, like really tight ball in my stomach, or in my chest, like I can't breathe. And then we can begin to breathe through those areas and actually process the feeling on an energetic space. And when we give ourselves space to actually feel these feelings, that's when we can begin to move through the feeling and release that charge that makes it feel so tight and difficult to
mm,
move through and get down to the deeper root of what's bothering you and what's going on. And then from that place, then you are touching back into the heart space. You are getting out of your head. I think they say something, I don't have a specific science reference point on this, but I know that it's like literally impossible to be in your body and in your brain at the same time.
Mm,
You're either in one or the other. And so if you're in your brain, you're not usually connecting into your body. And when you're in your body, it's much easier to be able to let go of the brain and the mind. So just really making that intentional choice of being more in your body. And maybe that's a practice. A lot of people love yoga or, taking walks in nature, something that can just get you into your physical senses again so that you can have that moment to drop in to just be present. And whenever we're present in the moment, then we're touching back into the heart space.
mm. I love that. And even just doing something like a quick embodiment exercise or breathing before going on a date, or maybe what's coming to me now, I think what might be difficult for a lot of women if they're, they have these very busy or high profile careers, and they maybe just go 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 during the day, and then they come home to a relationship. Like, how do they make that switch from, because maybe they've spent the whole day in their head, and then coming home to be in the heart? Like, how would one kind of make that switch? Do you think it's good to just take a minute before you walk through the doors, or do you have any advice there?
Yeah, well, I can speak from direct experience with this. I'm a mother to a little baby boy. He's almost 2, and I'm pregnant with another one
Oh,
right now.
congrats.
And I run an amazing, very successful company. And so and I have a lovely husband. So I'm
Mm,
constantly juggling being in a lot of different types of roles. And I find that, yeah, when I get into that go, go, go mode in the company, in the business role, I do have to be very intentional before I step into being a mother or being a wife to make sure I'm not bringing that energy, because you're right, it permeates in. And
mm,
I think the biggest thing is being intentional. That is
mm,
the awareness is the main tool here, is just noticing and recognizing, okay, I'm shifting, I'm switching. And there's actually a beautiful concept that Abraham Hicks talks about. Have you heard of Abraham
yes.
Hicks?
Yeah, I love
Yeah,
Abraham Hicks.
I figured you would. Yeah, absolutely. Right up in this world for sure. She talks about segment intending. Have you heard of this
Mm.
concept?
I have, but remind
Yeah.
me in more detail.
It's beautiful. It's this idea of just being more intentional, that every moment of time is what we can call a segment. So when you go from, your car into the store, that's a segment of time. Or when you, yeah, go from work to, transitioning to something else, that's a segment of time. And in these segments of time, most people, as you were referring to, just kind of go from one to one to one to one
Mm,
without making those moments intentional. But that we actually have so much power to not just shift our own energy, but to actually influence the next segment of time and how people respond to you based on how you want to be seen and felt in your energy. And
mm,
so I think that this is a really powerful tool for anyone listening that wants to just have a little bit more intentionality and awareness and play a little bit in the world of magic, of
mm,
getting to influence how people receive them by taking those pauses. And yes, besides just taking a breath to ground, also asking yourself, how am I feeling? How do I want to feel? And how do I want other people to feel in my presence in this
mm,
next moment of time? As I turn off my laptop and go and be with my family, or as I finish up at work and go out on this date, how do I want to choose to allow my energy to be received so that I can influence how those people are going to pick up on me? And it really does make a huge difference in how people show up and receive you, just in that little bit of awareness alone.
mm. I
Have you
love
ever
that.
tried that? Have you
I
played with
mean,
that
I
before?
I haven't done it in that specific way that you just mentioned, but I love bringing the others into it. Like, how do I want others to feel? Because I think something I try to live my life by is being intentional about as much as I can. I mean, sometimes, we just fall into the rat race and we're going from here to there. But if I can, I try to bring in intention, because I've had these words spoken to me before. I remember last year I was on a retreat in Costa Rica, and I had a shaman. And I don't know if you've met shamans, but they're very tapped in and they say very little, but when they speak, it's with potency and it's important what they say. And he said, everything is intention. It doesn't matter what you do, but your intention behind it is what makes the difference, which makes what you
Mhm.
do matter. It doesn't matter if you sit down on a meditation cushion. It doesn't matter if you do a yoga practice. So many of us are like, oh, I'll do my meditation practice every day. That makes me, I'm ticking the boxes, whatnot. But he was like, it doesn't matter unless you are intentional about what you do. And it's not about being consistent. It's not about ticking the boxes. It's everything with intention.
I love that. Oh,
Mm,
that just gave me chills. I love that. Because people can feel your intention too. That's something I've been noticing a lot is that, and this shows up in dating, this shows up in your career, it shows up in every area of life. You can't hide how you feel or how what your agenda is
mm,
underneath, right? You can pretend all
yeah.
day long that you can be some cool, calm, relaxed person that, is great to date. But if inside you feel like an emotional, insecure, anxious wreck,
Mm,
that energy is coming through. And it may
mhm.
not be your intention to be
Yeah.
anxious with and you may have the intention to be relaxed, but it is really about being in alignment with that authentic version of you.
Mm,
Yeah. And that's what really shines through.
yeah.
Yeah. I
Mm,
love that.
yeah. I love everything you've shared. So I wanted to talk about gender roles in today's conversation. So maybe could you speak to how they're important, if they're important, and how can we, I suppose, if they are so important to a relationship to, I suppose, increasing the polarity within a relationship, then how do we kind of um, inc- I don't know if the word's increase, but how do we um, yeah, maybe increase that polarity, or how do we implement them into a relationship? I don't know if that's the right word, but yeah, could we speak
Yeah.
about gender roles?
Yeah, absolutely. I love talking about this because I feel like this is something that's gotten a little bit haywire in this
Mm,
modern day world. And at least in the Western world, I'm
mm,
seeing this happen so much where there has been such this beautiful rise of women's empowerment, where women are
mm,
finally at this point of saying, I can be and do and have everything that men can have.
mm,
And yet, at some point, it's almost swung the pendulum a little bit too far. And I really do see this kind of extreme feminism has kind of taken things to a level where men are no longer feeling safe to even be men
mm,
in relationships, in business. It's like I talk to them and they say, you look like a woman, but you act like a man. So
yeah.
where am I supposed to fit in? And I really do feel like a lot of what I support women and want to be a role model in is bringing that pendulum back, where we're not 1950s housewives
Mm,
anymore and we're not extreme feminists anymore, but we're in this middle ground where we can be keeping all the power and the presence and the strength and the opportunities that we've rightfully been able to earn, but still have that softness and that warmth and that feminine essence on the
mm,
outside. Because that is the sweet spot that I think a lot of men are really looking for and desiring is being able to have someone that they can respect as a teammate, but still feel like has that emotional depth and loving, nurturing quality. And I think like you were referring to with your mom, and I know with my mom too, I think that whole generation they
mm,
kind of lost touch with this femininity
yeah.
in replace for feminism,
Mm,
and it's gone too far. And so, yes, I think gender roles are extremely important, and it's almost like we've kind of homogenized a lot in the roles.
mm,
And it's something I even talk about in my marriage sometimes. It's like, well, if I'm bringing in just as much money as you are, then who's covering what? And how do we still feel like I'm feeling like being provided for and you get to still
mm,
feel like a provider because I know that's important to you. And
mhm,
I still want to be able to relax into feeling provided for, but
mm,
yet we're doing the same thing and we're being
yeah.
equal partners here. So it's a really uncharted territory in this
Mm,
day and age. And it's a really important conversation, I think, that women get to have with men and with themselves around what does a healthy dynamic look like in this day and age, right? Because I do not want us to go back to the 1950s time where
no.
women are, forced into a very small box. I do believe we get to have all the opportunities to be the most self-expressed versions of us. And how do we do that in a way that doesn't emasculate men or make them feel
Mm,
inferior? And to me, it really is, like I said, I call it being strong on the inside and soft on the outside, where we know our value, we know our worth, we know our strength, we know our boundaries, where we know how to
Mm-hmm.
communicate with love, but we still bring this warmth and this soft energy, this nurturing energy that invites men in, that inspires men to want to be in our presence, not because we need saving, because we're damsel in distress, but because we want to inspire them to be the best version of them, and they get to inspire us to be the best version of ourselves. And I really do think that with that polarity balance, where men can bring in the divine masculine and women can bring in the divine feminine, we create a new foundation for partnership. I call it a spiritual and evolved partnership,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like we continue to evolve as teammates, as lovers, as partners into expanding each other in our own soul journey and growth. And that to me is the vision of where relationships get to go. It's not just about marrying to trade for a cow and for assets, right? And it's not marrying just so that we can have babies and continue on the species.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer just so that we can check the box and say to our society that we're married and we're good enough. It's
Mm-hmm.
now about I'm on a soul journey to grow and expand and become the best version of myself. And I know that being in partnership is what allows that to expand to the highest capacity. And I
Mm-hmm.
see that happen in my own marriage and this relationship I've been in for 10 years. It's the passion never dies. The fire, the flame has never died because we keep reinventing ourselves. We keep becoming more expanded versions of ourselves. And we keep challenging each other and reflecting back to each other the parts of each other that we want to keep seeing them as and seeing their potential as. And I think that that's just such a beauty that gets to be this new opportunity in relationships that
Mm-hmm.
maybe we didn't have in the past. And not everyone will be able to have that experience maybe in this lifetime. This is going to be a continued evolution. There's lots of skills and karmic debts and things that we have to release to get even to that baseline of feeling safe and secure in a partnership. But when you do get into a place of feeling so secure and safe and yeah, just solid in your partnership, that's when the real fun just gets to begin.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think that for a lot of people, they're worried that once they get into that partnership, that's when it just kind of starts to dwindle off and get monotonous. But I'm here to say that's when it just really gets started.
Mm, I love that because so often we're told, like, it's the honeymoon period. And then once that's over, then it'll just fizzle. And I think it's so much of what you're saying. It's about like just revisiting the relationship. And if you're constantly evolving and changing, like, how could it get dull? And I think everything's always going to have highs and lows. That's just the nature of reality as well. So learning to ride those waves and rather than resisting the challenges, can we use it as an opportunity to maybe build intimacy, to deepen?
Yes, yes, 100%, 100%.
Mm.
Yeah. I'm curious, are you in a partnership right now? Have you had these kinds of experiences?
No, I've been single for a while now. I am calling in my king at the moment. So this is probably the longest period I've been single. And I'm feeling really good because I had this realization where all my relationships in the past, I was like, I'm not aligning with the man that I want. There's something off here. And for most of my 20s, I was projecting, oh, it's them. And then, yeah, I got to a point where I was like, maybe I need to look at myself. And so I went on a journey of just working on myself and really looking at, okay, who's the man that I want and who do I need to become in order to attract this man. And I'm just so happy with the path that I'm on. And I'm just trusting the timing of everything. But I feel like I'm close, and I know that at this point I'm just growing so much that it has to, where I'm at now, the kind of men that I've been attracting over the past few years as I've been working on myself, it's just getting better and better, the quality. And I'm learning more to, as you were mentioning before, like speak what is true for me, set boundaries. That's been huge for me. I was someone who never had any boundaries before. So that's been a big one. And I just found, yeah, I'm gaining so much respect the more I'm learning to kind of assert my needs and speak from my heart. And yeah, it's just amazing the response that I've received back from that.
I love that. I love that. And this is literally the exact journey I love taking women on. Who is this woman you get to become? And I can see that and I can feel that in you. It's like stepping into this level of unapologetic confidence and love for yourself.
Mm.
Just like, of course you want to love me. Of course you want to be with me. With it, excuse me, without it being, an egotistical thing, but just getting
Mm.
to be a genuine, pure radiance coming out of you. But coming from that place of, like you were saying, the boundaries and the strength on the inside of, and these are my needs and my values, and I respect myself enough to communicate when I don't feel good.
Mm.
And I'm gonna hold you to this standard. And I love what you're saying, that you're seeing the caliber of men
Mm.
grow as you grow yourself, because this is what I talk about all the time. It's like, I almost see it as like an energy frequency, and you attract what you are.
Yes.
And so maybe in the past, yeah, and for me too, when I was in my hook and fizzle phase, I was kept attracting in these men that were very hot and cold, uncommittal. But it was because there was a lot within me that was still afraid to commit and go
Mm.
into the depths of myself. And as I stepped into this new level of myself, the caliber completely shifted to an entire different energy level and different frequency. And I attracted in lots of different men at that frequency. So it's such confirmation that you are exactly on that right path.
Mm.
And keep going, keep doing all the right things that you're doing, because it's true. It's absolutely true. And it's like women will come to me, they're like, Teal, I don't see any good men out there. I don't know. They don't exist. And what I
Mm.
always like to say is that it's not that they don't exist, it's just that you're operating at that lower frequency. And so that's what you're seeing. And that
Mm.
as you level up into this next frequency, that's when you start to see an entirely different level of men. And you're literally saying that's what you're seeing in front of you,
Yeah,
which is just
100%.
beautiful. And
And
I
I think
think the
it's
biggest,
also, oh, yeah.
yeah, oh, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say what you mentioned there, I think is really key about there's no good men out there because you hear that so often. And I think also our words are very powerful and our beliefs. I think this even goes back to Abraham Hicks, law of attraction. But it's really true. This life is a mirror, it's a reflection of ourselves, of the frequency, like you're speaking about. And I think catching ourselves if we're making comments like that, saying there's no good men out there, or the I hear lots of things, negative comments about men, and I think that's not helping the situation, as opposed to maybe looking like something I heard once, and I try to do this is like looking for the best in men and to see what I can love about every single man in my life, regardless if I'm dating them or not, but like to look for the beauty in the masculine. I think that is a beautiful way to reframe that belief and to start seeing the good, and all of a sudden you're seeing all this divine masculine in your field.
Yes, I love that. I love that. It's so, so true. We attract what we see and what we believe. Or we attract what we believe, and what we
Mm,
believe we then see, is what I meant to say. Yeah.
mm,
Yeah. And I was gonna say something and now I'm trying to remember. Oh, what I was gonna say to go along with your journey, I think the biggest thing right now is really honing in on not just the vision of what that man looks like and how he, what his criteria are, but how he really makes you feel,
mm,
to go along with this whole, and you're probably already aware of this, but it's such an important piece of the visioning aspect of this, is that, and is about how this person is making you feel and how you want to make them feel.
mm,
And from that place, you don't even have to question it from your brain. When you meet this person, it's not, okay, well, do they check all the boxes? Do they make, do we have good conversation? It's only, the question is, how does my body feel in his presence?
mm,
How does my heart feel in his presence? And
mm,
that's going to give you such a quick gut check of knowing if you're on the right track with this person or not.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's so feminine as well. Just learning, I speak about this a lot on the podcast about just learning to trust the wisdom of our body and tuning into our intuition. Because I think so many of us, like women, it's just such a superpower that we have, and we don't tap into it enough. And so often, particularly when we really like someone, we can just get up in the head and we're not listening to the cues of our body. And like you're saying, like, I think we all know straight away if it's a yes or a no. And like whether we're listening to that information, that's,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes, yes. And that's where I talk about this funny concept that I call the crazy girl, because that's when we turn into the crazy girl. It's always with the guys that we really like
Yeah.
that we completely lose our intuition. We completely lose that cool, calm, collected version of ourselves. And this is what was kept keeping me in my hook and fizzle pattern, was that I could be the calm, cool, collected person with everybody else in my life. But when it came to that guy that I really liked, I would turn into this other version of me that was anxious and insecure and in my
Mm,
head and overthinking everything. And that would shift my whole energy. That would shift the dynamic. That would shift how he felt in my presence. And it just changed everything. So, really getting clear on how is my body feeling? How's my energy feeling? And if I am starting to feel like that crazy girl,
mm,
dropping back down,
yeah.
coming back into the body, even excusing yourself in the moment to go to the bathroom to just clear your head a little bit and just being, like you were saying, very intentional. And I think that's the
Mm,
best way to be feminine, because
mm,
feminine is being present and being
mm,
present is to be intentional. So I think that's some really beautiful wisdom that
mm,
you're inspiring into this conversation. Yeah.
yeah. And so I'm curious to know if someone's listening to this conversation and maybe they've been in a long-term relationship, let's say, and maybe they're just learning about this whole idea of gender roles and masculine and feminine energy. And they're like, oh crap, we're kind of set in our ways now. We've been, in a certain pattern, and maybe they would like their man to step more into leadership and into that divine masculine energy. Is it possible within, say, a relationship where maybe you're set in your ways to shift the polarity and to maybe inspire the man to step up?
Yes, yes, definitely. I'm so glad you're asking this question, because this is a really common prevailing
Mm,
challenge too. And it's not easy to just flip a switch
mm,
when your entire conditioning and mode has been to live in the masculine energy. And that was me for a long time too. Um, so I think the easiest thing to do first, let me check in for a second. Like, what is the best thing for someone that's in that mode right now? Sometimes my brain goes spinning so much that I have to like slow it down
yeah.
and get back into my heart again to really make sure I'm being intentional in what I'm sharing.
Mm,
Because there's so much to share, but it's like, what is the right thing to share in this moment? Yeah. It always comes back down to energy, right? It always comes back down to energy. And so first is the awareness. The second is the shift for yourself, and knowing that you have so much ability to shift a dynamic every single moment of time. Even if you've had years and years and years of a specific way of relating, you can choose to shift that dynamic. And you don't even have to say anything. You don't have to make a big conversation about it. It can literally be just a shift in your energy, just like what I did just now, taking a pause,
mm,
not needing to fill the space every minute of every day, to just be intentional and ask yourself, what's the energy I want to come into this moment with? How do I want my man to feel me in this moment right now? And if you're used to operating in a certain way, or you don't know how you want your man to feel in your presence, then just do some journaling on that and go deeper on it, or ask for some support on that. But what I've noticed that really shifts the way a man responds to you is when you can choose to just completely let go of the mind chatter and just stay present. So this
mm,
may look like just putting your hand on the table and just feeling the texture of the table and just letting that be what you do for the moment. Or if you're in the car, just rolling down the window and letting the breeze go across your face. That in and of itself can shift the energy and shift the dynamic in that moment. And I've seen this happen with my man too, where when I choose to shift my energy out of the, I gotta,
Mm,
how are you doing? Okay, great. Gotta go over here. Okay, bye. Well, you gonna take care of that? Okay, great. From that energy to the, hi, my darling, how are you?
mm,
Like, it literally can be that much, that little of a difference can make a huge shift in how he chooses to respond to me. And I watch his energy soften and drop into his heart and meet me in that same space. Hi, love. It's good to see you too. Right. And then from there, you've opened up a new opportunity for a new dynamic to start. So I
mm,
don't think it has to be some big monumental thing. It's just about choosing to make the decision to make tiny shifts and see
mm,
what happens. And
mm,
obviously, there's larger things too, and there's bigger values that can be talked about of, hey, I know I've been kind of carrying all the financial weight for a long time, and I don't want to do that anymore. And I would like to feel like you can contribute more financially, or hey, I would like to be able to delegate some of all the things that I'm doing on in our daily life and feel like I'm more supported in our tasks and be able to have some of those conversations so that you can feel like you are being held more, or even just saying, hey, I miss our connection. I feel disconnected from you. I would love to feel you hold me in your arms and just feel that warmth from you,
mm,
again, even having those moments of just being able to articulate your needs and what you're wanting can make a big difference in how men show up. Because for a lot of times, men can lead the masculine from the physical place, from
mm,
leading a relationship forward or initiating phone calls and dates. But it's really on the woman's side to initiate the more emotional, energetic side of the relationship. And so not not feeling like we need to wait for a man to change everything for us and not treating it like a project that we're going to do from a masculine perspective, but rather choosing to make these little energetic shifts that naturally guide and shift the relationship into a more energetic emotional space. Does that
mm.
make sense?
Yeah, definitely. I love that. Like just shifting. It's always coming back to ourselves. And I also think what I'm picking up on is it's also the way you communicate as well. It's not wrong, like what you're communicating. You can have those more, I suppose, difficult conversations or more vulnerable, tender conversations, but it's, I suppose, how you do it, rather than coming from an aggressive or projecting way. If we drop into our hearts and just speaking what's true, even if it might not be what the other person wants to hear. But I think if we're always coming back to, again, the intention coming into our hearts, it's always going to be more well received, even if it's not in that present time. But I think you can rest well that, you've done the right thing and something positive has to come from this.
Yes, yes. I love that. So
Mm,
beautiful.
mm,
Yeah, I think you have so much of this already so embodied in who you are, just and I can see in the way that you're talking with me that it's
mm,
only a matter of time before he does manifest for you. And
mm,
for women listening, if any of this resonates, I'm happy to connect with you on this and share more about this and be able to hear more from you of what you're going through and support you through this. Because it's really important to ask for help in these
mm.
ways if you're not fully understanding what's going on, why is this not working? What am I doing that could be contributing this? If we don't have that clarity, then we keep attracting in the same kinds of
Yeah,
things. The universe just keeps delivering the same message and learning lesson until we figure it out. So
yeah.
that's why I just love doing the work that I do so much because I get to be that catalyst for growth and for change on the
Mm,
inside so that people's lives can radically shift and change on the outside. And I see it happen over and over. And it's so powerful and exciting to
mm.
watch ladies' lives transform before my eyes.
Yeah, it's amazing. And it's so important. I think we're all here to seek genuine, authentic connections. And I think it's such a big, pivotal part in most people's lives. So it's, yeah, just amazing the work that you're doing. And so I'm curious to know from your perspective as a relationship coach, what's the best advice you've ever personally been given about a relationship and your relationship, and why?
Great question. Excuse me. Just getting over a cold.
Oh,
Um, This is going to sound really funny, but I took the best relationship advice from a movie. Um, did you ever watch The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants?
Yes, love it.
I love that movie. It's a great chick flick. If anyone hasn't watched it, you need to watch it. Total
Yeah.
chick flick. It's great. But there's that little cancer girl named Bailey
Mm,
who ends up dying, but
yeah.
she's so profound and she's so
Mm,
wise for her young age. And I remember her saying something to Tabitha, and she said, every person comes into our life for us to either learn something from or for us to be able to help them learn something.
mm,
And I thought, that is an amazing way to go out into dating and meeting men.
mm,
And I took that advice and when I was really going into this new place of self-discovery and getting back out there into the dating world, I stopped worrying about, is he the one? I stopped trying to fit the checklist. I stopped worrying about how I was showing up. And I just presented myself from the place in the mindset of, what can I learn from you in this interaction?
mm,
Or what can you learn from me?
mm,
And it really brought me out of my head and brought me back into being my authentic self
mm,
and letting them experience me in my authentic self. And I really just it was able to just detach from the outcome and just get to appreciate the experience of being with this person. And I did. I learned so much. I mean, I dated so many men. I learned so much from them, and I'm hoping I inspired some of them on their journeys of life.
mm.
And that then brought me into the relationship I have now. So
I
that would
love
be it.
that. That's
Mhm.
beautiful. Such great advice. And yeah, I have a similar thing where I always believe everything happens for a reason. So I guess it kind of falls along those lines. And I always go into every situation, regardless if it's a date or not, but just I know there's a reason for every interaction. Everything is happening for me. And even if it's challenging, like looking for what can I learn? Why is this catalyst happening? How can I evolve? There must be something for me. And I think if you have, like you're saying, that mentality with everything, and I think it's such a great thing to do if you're in that dating phase in particular, like you'll go into every date, regardless if it's what you would consider good or bad, you'll get something out of it. Or if it's not for you,
Yeah.
you know it's for them. So I think that
Yes.
in return makes you feel good, right?
Yes. Yes. 100%. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. It's so fun. It just makes me feel so magical and shiny to talk about things like this. It's like there's so much more than just what our little human brains understand.
mm-hmm.
It's just life is so fun when we really tap into the magic and the synchronicity and the play of all of this. It
Yes.
makes life really fun.
Yes, I fully agree. And so, my final question for you, and this is something I ask all my guests on the podcast, as you're on the Thank Goddess podcast, this podcast is about awakening goddess consciousness within ourselves and the world at large. And so, I always describe goddess consciousness as, being in our hearts, kind of what we spoke about today, being our most authentic self, being, literally being. So, when do you feel most aligned with the goddess or goddess consciousness?
Oh, great question. When I'm dancing.
Mm,
I absolutely love dancing. In the last few years, I've really developed a love and passion for pole dancing.
mm,
Um, and there's just such a magic that comes through that there's so much of it that's like a self-expression to move through my body. And then there's another part of it it seems egotistical, but I don't see it as that. It's like watching myself in the mirror dancing. It's such an appreciation for myself,
mm.
like, wow, you are beautiful. You are so expressive. Like I can see the light just coming through every bit of your essence in your body. And that to me is when I feel so tapped into myself. And I would say the other part of it is when I'm coaching women, I
Mm,
feel so aligned in what I do. I really do leave my brain at the door and I just
mm,
channel. And I feel so connected to my highest purpose of what I'm meant to be doing here on this planet. And that
mm,
just makes me feel so fulfilled and happy.
beautiful. And
Yeah.
finally, where can people find you if they're wanting to work with you and connect with you deeper?
Yeah, I will leave some links for you to put in the
Mm,
show notes. I
definitely.
have a lovely Instagram following for anyone that just wants to get daily inspiration. I also have some really beautiful guided meditations that are free that you guys can go and check out. One is all around deepening your self-love, and the other one is to help you call in the one. You're welcome to download that one if you want, since you're already in that path. Really beautiful guided activations set to music, and it gets you into a really powerful frequency in your body and your spirit. And then I'll also leave a link to my calendar. So if any woman just wants to have a free 30-minute breakthrough call with me, they're happy to book time in with me and we can chat deeper.
Mm, thank you so much. And yeah, I'll share all your links in the show notes so everyone will be able to find you. Thank you, Teal. This has been amazing. I've loved connecting with you and I've resonated with so much of what you've shared today. It's pretty clear to me why we've connected and it feels like a definite alignment. So yeah, thank you so much for your wisdom. I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so wonderful being here, Danielle. Thank you.
Mm.